Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. You know we are good at what we do. Today I would be giving you a recap of a 2017 movie, titled The Chase. Spoiler alert, trust me, you would enjoy it. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to our channel and like this video. Mr. Deok-soo Shin, a landlord of several homes, is seen preparing for his daily activities. Stepping out that day, he visited Mr. Choi, one of his tenants who owe rent. He asked Mr. Choi to either steal or work, but he must ensure he delivers his money. After speaking harshly to Mr. Choi, he set off for other places. On his way, there is a murder incident on his way. He stopped by there and he expressed his displeasure about the corpse, claiming house rent would become lower in that environment due to the incident. While he was looking, he saw one of his tenants who he calls room 205. He asked for his rent and she told him she would pay tomorrow. Room 205 set out for her place of work and Deok-soo went to his location to repair the room lock. Where he packed his bike, a young boy passed around and saw a lot of flies. He checked into the room and saw a dead body. Deok-soo finished at that place, rode to a toast store to collect his rent from the tenant. After he collected his rent, the tenant offered him a sandwich and he sat to eat. He got a call from Mr. Lee, a police officer, as regards the dead body found by the little boy. After he attended to Mr. Lee, he left for home. Before entering his room, he checked up on Mr. Choi and saw Mr. Choi prepare a heavy dinner. He complained Mr. Choi can eat but not pay his rent. Mr. Choi asked him to join him in the dinner since the person he prepared it for didn't come. While they were eating, he asked Mr. Choi what was his last occupation. He replied he was a police officer. Mr. Choi told him the two people whose dead body was seen that day are his friends. They all attended a church feeding program on Tuesday, but the men didn't attend on Thursday. He presumed they were murdered on Wednesday night. Mr. Choi also told him there was another man who didn't come on Thursday, which is Mr. Han. The last time something like this happened was about 30 years ago, and they were unable to catch the culprit. Shim told Mr. Choi to stop thinking that way and make sure he pays his rent, and Shim, leaving his apartment, Shim asked Choi to do him a favor. He should check up on him every time, because he doesn't want to be found dead in a bad state. Shim also told him he would help him fix his doorknob the next day. When Shim left his apartment, he heard conversations about a stalker from 205's room. It was the lady and her friend talking. He wanted to check up but he left. At the midnight, Mr. Choi was seen going out to his door and a robe was used to tie him back. The next morning, Shim went to Choi's apartment to fix the doorknob. After fixing, he called Choi out to no avail. He entered and saw he is dead. He fell in shock. Also, two women who saw the way he shouted at Choi the day before entered and saw Choi dead. The woman presumed it was the rent issue that made Choi commit suicide, so everyone in the neighborhood stopped associating with Shim because they thought he killed Choi. Shim went back to Choi's apartment to check. He was attacked by Pyung-da Park. Mr. Choi friend and Park asked for Choi. He informed Park Choi killed himself. He was told Choi had no reason to kill himself. He had just been invited by his son whom he hadn't seen in 20 years and he is so excited to kill himself, so Choi was rather murdered. That night, June entered her room. He saw her friend's belongings scattered and her friend was down in the bathroom. He tapped her and saw she had been killed. The killer was still inside the room and he killed room 205 too. Mr. Shin went to Young Suk for a sandwich. At the restaurant, he met Park again. Park told him the killer is doing just like it was done 30 years ago, and now that 3 old men are dead, the next person would be a lady with long hair. Shim remembered he heard some noise from June the last night. He excused himself from Park and went to check June. When he got to the room, he saw a guy trying to open the door. He got suspicious and chased the guy. He was hit by a stick and he collapsed. When he woke up, he saw a set of young guys with the guy opening room 205. They asked for money and wanted to take his wallet. He saw Mr. Park and Mr. Pak helped him out. He told Park he saw the guy in front of room 205. The guy told them his girlfriend stays with a friend there and he had been calling them to no avail, so he wanted to check upon them. Shim took his keys and they opened the door to see Win friend's head in the fridge, but June was missing. Park believes the killer took June alive, and if Shin calls the police the killer would kill June too, so they should find the killer together. Park tries to convince Shim to stay quiet so they can find June. June is seen with the killer. Park showed Shim the police case file from 30 years ago. Choi kept the files. The death sequence was just the same with how it is right now. He told Shim about all the victims till the last victim, which is the 13th victim. Park told him there was a woman who escaped from the killer, Young Suk, the sandwich seller. According to Park, Young Suk had no memory of him and they weren't able to get her testimony. Park begged Shim to help him out. He showed Shim the notes Choi had been writing about the crime. He had a list of possible suspects. Shim saw his name on the note, got angry, and left. The next day, Park went to him again. Shim decided to help him and they went around checking the list of suspects and canceling the ones that shouldn't be in it. They went to Young Suk fast food to get some snacks. In front of the store, Park saw a man who pushed his wife on a wheelbarrow. His name is Na, and suspected him. Shim gathered information about him and got to know he moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago. He is a doctor who volunteered for medical checkup. Park met with him for checkup, touched him and concluded he is the man from 30 years ago. June is seen in the killer's apartment. He was treating her and she just woke up. She was screaming and begging for her life. Since Park insists Na was the killer, they wanted to check his apartment. They saw Na left the apartment, so Park decided to trace Na to know when he would be back, and Shim, being a locksmith, should break into the apartment and check inside. While Park followed Na, in the market, he lost sight of Na and was ambushed by the young guys he beat up the other day. In the house, Na met Shim trying to break into one of the rooms. Na told him the lady he is looking for is not in his house and he should please leave. Na tried to stop Shim from opening the door. Park arrived. They were able to open the door, but they saw only poppies in the room. Park really insists Na was the killer and he is the same person he met 30 years ago, so Park wanted to shoot Na but was stopped by Shim. It was at that point, Shim realized Park was an Alzheimer's patient and he wasn't normal. His son came to pick him up on the way. He kept saying he is the culprit. Na helped Shim to treat his injury and Shim went back home. At home, Shim remembered Choi told him about another old man who didn't come back for a free meal, so Shim went to Mr. Han's home, found his dog dead. While examining the dog, he saw a key. The key belonged to a man he once repaired his door. So Shim went to the man's home. He opened the doorknob, checked inside and saw the images of the dead old men in his drawer. Suddenly Mr. Lee, the policeman, wanted to arrest him for the murder of Mr. Han. He explained to Mr. Lee that the occupant of the room is the one who had been killing everyone and most possibly had June with him. The man's ID was found in the house. Mr. Lee went to Do-sik's workplace to find him, but Shim found him first. Do-sik attacked Shim, and Mr. Lee came to intervene, but Do-sik fought him, pushed him off the stairs, and ran off. Shim chased after Do-sik, but Do-sik was hit by a running vehicle. Before he died, Shim asked where he kept Do-sik, but he insisted he didn't take her and he gave up the ghost. The next day several news channels carried the news of Do-sik's death. Do-sik had been arrested about 10 years ago for injuring the old and he has always hated old people. In the next scene, the killer is seen injecting something into a drip for June. Shim went to the police to narrate all he knows, but the police thinks he is absurd for thinking a 60-year man can go around killing people, so he left the police station. He branched at Jong Suk's shop, but she is closing early. Seeing the news earlier got her terrified and reminded her of her previous experience. Shim told her, the man is back, and asked for her help in catching him. She narrated all she knew about him. She said he had a strong scent and he would most likely have 6 fingers. So Shim visited Park in the hospital, pretending to be Mr. Choi. He described that the killer has 6 fingers and has a very strong scent. Park told him he is hungry and he needed food. On his way out, Park told him again that Na is the killer. So Shim drove to Na's apartment. Na invited him in. He saw Na had different fingers too. Na told him he had surgery and Shim suggested that maybe he cut off the 6th finger. He knew immediately that he was the one. He asked where June was, and Na asked how he knew he was the one. Shim tried to attack him and he hit Shim with a plank. He took Shim to the same room he kept June. June could no longer talk because her tongues had been paralyzed. Na said after that day, she wouldn't be able to move again, because he would remove her nerves. Mr. Shin asked why he was doing all that. He told him when he saw June she looked like his wife when she was young, so he wants to use her to replace his wife. Do-sik saw him when he was in June's apartment, so he decided to make it a good plan to implicate Do-sik, and he was the one who hit him so he wouldn't confess. He wanted to start the process of incapacitating June, but Park came in with a gun. Park shot him in the ear. While Na was in pain, Park loosed the rope used to tie Shim and Shim went ahead to rescue June. Park asked Shim to take June to safety. Na poured acid on Park and they got into a fight. During the tussle, Na took the gun and shot Park. He also shot his wife. And he set out to find Shim and June. Shim and June kept hiding from him. He later caught Shim and wanted to shoot him. Just about that time Park came to save him. Shim and Park got into a fight with Na and Park wanted to kill Na. Shim stopped Park from killing him and the police were called to arrest Na. Mr. Park went to pay tribute to Mr. Choi, and while Mr. Shim was in the hospital, June and Jong Suk visited him. The movie ended. Thank you for staying with me till the end. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Kindly subscribe on our channel so you would get notified when next we post a movie recap. Thank you and see you next time.